Yes, life is seeking a freer, fuller, more expansive expression of itself through us today.
Hmm.
That life woke us up this morning. That life lives in us. That life is present. So, welcome to another episode of Inside Out Alignment. Your host, Mary Tapper, and this platform, which is for self discovery and creativity. It's an honor to have with us somebody who is very creative and who is going to be talking to us today about the creative process. And is none other person than Marisa Handler. Now I'm going to read a little bit about Marisa before we get to her. So Marisa is a writer. She's a singer, a songwriter, teacher, and coach. She's the author of the memoir Loyal to the Sky, which won a Nautilus Gold Award for world changing books. Her essays, fiction, journalism, and poetry have appeared in The Sun, Orion, Salon.com, Witness, Cosmos, Tikkun, 580 Split, and other publications. Marisa earned her master's in fine arts from the Iowa Writers Workshop and has received numerous fellowships in creative writing, including a Fulbright and an Elizabeth George Foundation grant. Her poem, The Vanishing, won the Louis Cranston Memorial Poetry Prize and was nominated for a postcard. She has taught creative writing at a range of places, including Mills College and Stanford University, and workshops on creativity, transformation, and meditation at Esalen, Spirit Rock, and the California Institute for Integral Studies. She also works one on one as a writing coach and a personal transformation coach. Marisa has practiced insight meditation in retreats and daily life since 2002 and is also a committed practitioner of Byron Katie's The Work, Authentic Movement, and Biodancer. She's currently at work on a novel. You can find more at www.marisahandler.com. So, Marisa, it's really a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
It's an honor. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah. Marisa, you talk about the creative process. Can you try to expatiate to us, to you, what is creative process?
Yeah. Gosh, that's such a huge question. I feel like
Yeah.
I could think about that and sit with that and talk about it for a long time. To me, at its deepest level, the creative process is being aligned with life force itself. And so there's this really interesting dance because creativity comes through us in ways that are very particular to us. We have certain gifts, maybe. Um, maybe one of us is a writer, one of us is an entrepreneur, one of us is a
Mm-hmm.
chef. And at the same time, for me, in its deepest experience, it's actually about moving out of the way. So there's this beautiful paradox, I think, that comes into play between really moving out of the way to let something that's much greater than us move through
Mm-hmm.
and with its full force, and then also having our own particular, very individual way of doing that. And I think the better we get at learning, I just seeing a hummingbird flying outside. It's like my spirit animal. Hi, hummingbird. Okay, I think the better we get at learning both how to get out of the way and what uniquely facilitates this for us,
Mm-hmm.
the more we can live as creative beings. So there's that part of it, and then there's also just the craft side of things. So for example, if you're a writer, or I'll speak for myself, I'm a writer. It's mastering the craft, like actually becoming better, and that's a whole path, and that takes time. That operates in the world of the relative, but on the level of the absolute, I think it's about opening, really, and that can happen in any moment, and that's very much vertical, present
Hmm.
moment experience. Yeah.
So when you say we getting out of the way,
Mm.
what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, good question. Um, so let's use writing as an example, because I've done a lot of teaching of writing, and
Mhm.
I've seen many examples of students and clients. The things that get in our way are things like, and they're so uncreative, these thoughts. I see them over and over again. They're all recycled. I'm not good enough. I have nothing new to say. I'm not smart enough. I'm going to be out on the street if I do this. I'm going to be poor. Everybody's going to stop approving of me. There are thoughts like this, which can be very powerful in blocking our creativity. And when it comes to these thoughts, it's not. I think there are different approaches
Mhm.
to how to work with this stuff. For me, it really seems that often these blocks come from very deep old wounding, and so it can work for a while to kind of power through. But I really do think that ultimately we need to meet these with compassion, and like children, which they are, these
Right.
old child places, and with a great deal of kindness. And they often, these can be gateways to these in my experience, these actually are gateways ultimately to greater expansion. They can limit us, but when we meet them, and we meet them with some skill and with some kindness, they ultimately open us further. But these are the ways we get in the way. Is by limiting ourselves, that the beliefs that block us, that tell us we're not good enough, that tell us um, it's been done before. What's the point? Uh, this is getting through what blocks us, and ultimately, I think it's about kind of giving these room, but not letting them take the driver's seat. Like, okay, there you are, honey, there you are, trying to keep me safe and small. Thank you. Or maybe listen. I'm going to listen to you for a while, or I'm going to free write out of your voice, give you some room,
Mhm.
and then I'm going to come back to the page. So not war never works. It might work for a while. We might discipline and fight ourselves into production for a while, but it doesn't work in the long term. So
Yeah. So, does it sometimes look like we are so hard on ourselves?
mm,
Because it's very easy for us to like elevate somebody else and be like, "Oh, you're good," or "Yes, you can do this." But when it comes to on a personal level, mostly that like overrides maybe a lot of the things that we already know, or the things that we can actually do, or those limiting beliefs that we're telling ourselves, which are actually not true.
yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes is the short answer. We compare, we judge, we kill it before it can even begin. And Anne Lamott talks about shitty first drafts, and I'm a strong proponent of this. That when we sit down to the creative to create, to really just let it come through, and no judgment. Just
Hmm.
let it move, and no judgment, no editing, no critique. And then later, as artists, we come back and we revise and we make it stronger. I know a lot about comparing. I went to the Iowa Writers Workshop, and I'd been writing nonfiction prior, but I'd actually not written any fiction as an adult. And I got into my program, and all of my peers had been writing and thinking about fiction for a long time, and I just was at sea. And I remember the first story I workshopped my teacher, whom whom I love now, Ethan Kanan, but he looked at it and he said, I don't know what to do about this. This isn't literary fiction. And he tossed it in the middle of the table, and we all just looked at him blank-eyed. Nobody, a couple of my peers spoke up trying to kind of in defense of the story, but he had a point. He had a point. What I was writing at that time wasn't particularly good. At the same time, yeah, and so I was constantly comparing myself to my peers, and many of those peers have gone on to win major awards. Yeah, they're some of the brightest stars in our global literary landscape, and so I know a lot about that game, and
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't help. It just doesn't help. It We need to learn to become better at our craft. That's important, and we can do that. But that takes just learning craft and learning skill and actually a good deal of encouragement. So when I teach, I think it's really important to point out both what my students or my clients are doing really well, as well as
Mm-hmm.
what needs work. Yeah.
That we need to like really get a little bit to be a little compassionate about ourselves
Oh my
and
God.
not
So
just beat ourselves up about a lot of these.
I think that the beating
This
up, it never works. Like, even, I'm revising right now. I'm working on the fifth draft of my novel, and
sure.
I'm working with my agent, whom I love, and it just, even that process where I'm like, I've been working on it so long, and now it's more editing, more revising. Um, Beating myself up is, it's a very different process than beating myself up. It's actually thinking kind of critically about, like, does this passage work? Is this character, what's going on in this scene? Da da da.
Mm-hmm.
Beating ourselves up never works. It never
Yeah,
goes
wow.
anywhere good. Yeah.
Not at all. It only frustrates and and gets us deep into the dungeon and all that. Right.
Yeah.
So, here, writer, you sing and you coach, you do a lot of things. So what prompted you into this? Was it just a passion to this or
That's a good question. There are certain people who, I have a good friend, and he knew from the age of 3 that he wanted to be a doctor.
mm,
And he's a doctor. He's South African, working around HIV in Johannesburg, and I've always envied people like that a little bit. Uh, that hasn't been my path. I I always excelled academically. In my 20s, I did a great deal of activism and social change work. I knew I wanted to contribute and to serve. And I came into writing actually as a tool for that, for amplifying voices that were not getting heard. I went gallivanting around the globe writing about communities in the Amazon resisting oil exploitation, or the way that India was being affected, for example, by the U.S. going to war in Iraq, which had whole implications in South Asia. Writing about issues like this, and then writing about global justice work within activism, within the movement in this country. And I wrote a memoir. It wasn't my idea to write a memoir. It was the editor at my publishing house. She looked at the things that I'd given her and said, I think the messages you're trying to get across would be much better served by your personal story than by kind of more academic tone book, which is what I was working on. Why don't you write a memoir? And I was like, I'm 28, like, I'm not, I don't know, Paris Hilton. Like, why would I write a memoir? Who's going to, I don't know, listen, Michelle Obama. I'm not anybody that is famous. Why should I, and she kind of made the argument for it. And then I tried it. I sat down and I tried it, and it was much more creative than any kind of writing I'd done. Well, any kind of writing I'd published. I'd been writing poetry, but
Mhm.
and it ended up being this really expansive, expanding process of discovering my own, moving further into my own creative voice as a writer. There, I'd been creating and I'd been performing as a singer-songwriter. I'd been bringing song into the movement and teaching and guiding and others with song. And I'd also been writing poetry, but that was the first time I thought, gosh, like I can really bring creativity into even this kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started thinking, wow, what would happen if I just went purely into the creative. So actually after that book came out, I applied to get an MFA in fiction. And then I've just kind of gone, just kept going. So it's been a process really of just following my heart at each step and never knowing necessarily what it would lead to. And it's just always worked. I strongly believe that when there's a beautiful quote by Goethe about uh, well, there's a few actually. When we trust ourselves, we will know how to live. He says.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's been a gradual process of coming more into trusting, like, what am I wanting to do, and what's my journey, and then living in that way. And in my experience, life rises to meet us when we do that. I imagine you've had some
Sure.
experience with this. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Beautiful. Yeah. Even studying this or, maybe having this platform right now, this is not something that I envisioned. This is not something that I thought I would be in or becoming a life coach and all that. It's true. I've always had that mind in my mind, like I really that longing to serve,
Mm,
but I wasn't really clear about what I wanted to do. Even when I finished with my business management administration, I was like, okay, I don't feel this like this is really where I want to be, or I had to like really get back into myself to find out, and with the help of my husband.
mm,
So trying to work things out and being connected more to my inner self. So I was able when I finally got to this space where I watch, certain documentaries and certain things, and I'm like, oh, this is it. And that one video that really changed me, like really gave me that path was one day my husband just advently just sent me a video and said, can you watch this? And I watched the video and I'm like, not only first of all, not only did I relate to the message that was being conveyed, but the person that was giving that message, I felt that deep connection with the person. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I felt like a resounding yes in me. And I was like, oh, this is it. And
mm,
that is how, I called him. I'm like, where did you get this from? And he was like, it was just on my feed. And I watched it. And when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, this definitely is my wife. And
mm,
that's why I sent it to you so you watch. I didn't tell you anything because I wanted you to be able to watch it yourself and let me know,
mm,
how you felt about it. And I was like, yeah, you saw everything right. And just how I started and be like, okay, I think this
mm,
is my new path and let's see how it goes. Yeah. Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. So you also talk about healing.
Mm,
Healing, I know there are different ways or different types of healing. Healing in what sense, and you know, how would you explain that to us? Like, in what way or in what sense are you talking about healing? Is it healing from our past, healing from, limiting beliefs or sickness or I don't know.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's both, so our limiting beliefs are generally rooted in our past. So uh yeah, in my own experience, I've gone through a few dark nights of the soul. It's actually a theme that I teach on. I taught recently at CIAS on this, and these are periods where, yeah, where my life as I knew it was sort of ripped out from under me, and I was sunk in some very old places of tremendous fear and self hatred, really, a great deal of shame. And this is not an experience I would wish on anybody. But emerging from those, uh, I've been expanded. Uh, so it's almost like everything all my habits, my ways of managing my life in the world kind of got shattered.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been open to newer levels of surrender and letting go of control. So to me, healing really is about coming into wholeness. It's not always a pretty process. There's a writer who says, if you think you're going through a spiritual experience when you're having a dark night of the soul, then it's not a dark night of the soul. These experiences, these moments in our lives where we really go into, this is just doesn't feel like any, this is just awful,
Right.
and and uh and these bring up elements of ourselves that have been unconscious or subconscious, and ultimately I think this is the psyche's sort of stab in the direction of wholeness. um, but it takes a tremendous amount of compassion ultimately, and also just some great guides and teachers and teachings, I think, to come through that. So yeah, for me, healing, it's not unrelated to creativity. I think that the more kind of healed we are, the more our creativity can suffuse our whole lives, our whole beings. And it certainly is related to awakening in the
Mm-hmm.
traditional sense. Yeah.
Wow. So, and not one of your other experiences is like you turn down a job, a job offer, yeah, from McKinsey Management Consulting, and that was like a turning point for you. So, how was that a turning point? Not actually accepting the job, turning it down. How was that a turning point?
Yeah, it was maybe the first major decision I ever made on my own. I was a senior at Berkeley, and I was an English and interdisciplinary studies major. I was all humanities. I just took classes and things I enjoyed, and then I McKinsey Management did consulting, did recruiting among certain people to participate in their job application process. And I thought, what the hell, why not? That sounds kind of interesting. And I went to an initial meeting at Haas Business School, and I think everybody else was they were all these people who'd been studying business. I didn't even know what they were talking about because I didn't know the jargon. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went home and I learned, 20 or 30 new vocabulary words, and then it all made sense. And I ended up applying and going through multiple rounds of interviews and actually getting offered. I think there were 4 people out of their initial pool of 80 who were offered a job. And yeah, so you can imagine, everybody in my life was like, oh my God, this is an amazing opportunity. You're going to be set for life. Like, just go there, work your butt off for a couple of years. They'll put you through an MBA somewhere like Ivy League, and then you come out and you're just going to be earning, so much for the rest of your life. And it was also interesting. The people that I met were interesting. They were brilliant, compelling people. So at McKinsey, so it was a real turning point. I ended up turning the job down and saying, I want to save the world, and I want to sing, and I want to. These are the things I want to do. Maybe I'll do this later. But it was not an easy decision to make, and I think that sort of was the first step, or one of the early steps on a path of constantly saying, like, wow, like, wouldn't that be nice and easy to have a really big salary somewhere doing something where someone's telling me exactly what to do and how to do it. And yeah.
Wow. So after you made that decision, actually, after listening to the voice of truth, after like really, yeah, and making that decision, that bold decision, actually, how did you feel?
I think scared, initially. I didn't burn bridges. I said like, I'd like to keep in touch,
Mm-hmm.
but I never did end up going back. They said, "Oh, you just have to do the final interview round," and do keep in touch, and I didn't, and and there have been moments I've thought about, oh, McKinsey, but yeah, I think, I had a pretty rude awakening, actually. I'd gone through my entire academic career being kind of just given a lot of affirmation and honors, and I graduated, and then I looked for a job in the nonprofit world, and I couldn't find anything. It took a while to actually just even find a job, and so it was humbling,
Mm-hmm.
and I definitely, there was definitely, I mean, this was my early 20s, and there was a lot of questioning, and then I ended up getting into, actually, even then, finding some creative work in some web production work, but it didn't feel right, and I ended up feeling sort of depressed, and then I decided, like, I needed to do something. This wasn't I just was in a environment where I felt depressed, and I was losing my motivation to work. And so I took myself to India for a while. I just thought,
Mm.
I need to take myself out of this. I was 24. Uh, I didn't even know why I wanted to go to India. It just sounded, something in me wanted to be there. And
Mm.
yeah, so I went and traveled around India for 5 months on my own, and I'd been writing, and I'd done a little publishing at that point, and I went and pitched to um, the foreign editor at the San Francisco Chronicle, saying, "Hey, I just thought, like, this would be really cool. Like, I want to go travel and be a backpacker and kind of discover myself. And I also, it would be great to write." And it just so happened that there was 9/11, and the U.S. went to war against Iraq, and all of this happened right around the same time I was going. And so it didn't stop me from going. I was very interested in how the region was being affected, and so I ended up stringing from India and Nepal to the San Francisco Chronicle and to a couple of other places about sociopolitical and cultural events related to that. And yeah, this is kind of, and then, so I spent a lot of time just being a backpacker and exploring. I also did my first long meditation retreat there. So several strands of my life came together in that moment. The creative, the explorer, and then also the spiritual. So
Right. Wow. Beautiful journey too.
thank
Like
you.
just thinking you got to travel and you do it. And, and right. So making like really firm decisions, like I'm going to turn down this job. Like, is this really what I want to do? And then you decide not to take it. And so you like in sync with yourself, just following through with, what spirit or, with your inner light and just moving forward in your life. That's really inspiring. I'm saying this because I know most of us, we tend to focus on what everybody is saying,
Mm.
what our conditions are, what everybody else is doing, and not really paying attention to what we would love to do. And you really thinking like, oh, I would love to write, I would love to be, to create more, I would love to, to sing and things like that, and really getting to the things that you love to do. It's very difficult for most people to get to that space where they're able to make such decisions, and especially in maybe in that time that there is so much uncertainty, and actually go down that road towards that which they love, which is not often easy. So I really yeah, I
Mm.
really commend your strength and your ability to do that. Yeah,
Thank
really
you.
awesome. Yeah. So you also talk about awakening.
Mm.
Can you expand a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this is a topic that I love. So it's really opening up to the greatness of who we are, which is beyond personality, and it's beyond thought, really. So it's tapping to, for me, this has been, the Dharma, Buddhism has been a major vehicle, starting in my early 20s, and I teach some in that tradition as well. And And the work of Byron Katie, which is a powerful inquiry process, investigating stressful or painful limiting beliefs, basically, that's also been a really important vehicle. But ultimately, I think it's for me, the process of awakening is moving deeper and deeper into love and awareness, intelligent, loving awareness, which is who we are at the deepest level. And also just trusting that whatever's coming up in the process, whatever is pissing me off today, or whoever's driving me crazy yesterday, like that's exactly what's needed for me to open, to look at, to sit with, to inquire into. um yeah, so there's a beautiful dance that happens between, you could say, I could say my spirit or my soul and life itself. um,
Mhm.
and I do think life really is the greatest teacher. We get exactly what we need to wake us up. It can also shut us down, uh, and I've certainly had my experience of that as well. um, but it's there, it's knocking, and sometimes it has to like scream to get our attention. um, so for me, increasingly, it's been about like, uh, growing in humility, and I have my ideas of how things should be and how they should look, and I really like to be in control. I really like to be safe, um, and increasingly letting go of that and giving way to something, to really the creative power, whether we want to call that God or spirit or source or emptiness in Dharma language, the muse, the unconscious. Maybe Jung would talk about. Well, he'd call one element of it the unconscious. So I think they're different names, but ultimately opening to a mystery far greater than me, and letting it kind of um, run the show more and more. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you say to somebody who is out there now and they feel some longings
Mm.
and they have this content, you know, they have these deep longings and their environment, their circumstance is not conducive, but they know they don't like what they are doing, or maybe it might be their job. Maybe they don't really feel fulfilled,
Mm.
and they keep pushing that longing under the rug.
Mm.
They
Mm.
feel guilty about it,
Mm.
but they never like really take action towards that which they are longing for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, I'm thinking of Rumi and the mystics. Rumi talks a lot about trusting the longing, and really, that being a bell to wake us up, that we can follow that. Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss. Many great minds have spoken to this. I think when we're, again, it's holding this paradox of, we are exactly where we need to be, and we can trust this longing to take us exactly where we need to go. So I think, listening to that, listening to this deeper part of ourselves, you could call it the heart, or the soul, that has a sense, hey, this isn't where I want to be. And the more we can listen to that and open to that, uh, uh, the more we can listen to what the other messages it might be giving us, like, this is more where I want to go. Or, if we're shutting that longing down, we're also shutting off. You were talking about, yes, about having this intuitive yes that came through for you, right?
Right.
We can only be open to that when we're also open to the longing, and when we're also open to some of our pain. I've been thinking and writing a lot lately about the connection between feeling and creating. And when we're shutting ourselves down, we're also shutting down our life force, our creative energy. So it requires some courage, really, to begin opening up to both our longing, and also the other things that might be there with it, maybe the grief that we haven't been.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And then when there's some openness to this, really looking at one's life, and once that does open up, there is more creativity online, and actually immediately almost there'll be more options visible. Like once we open up to what's happening inside ourselves, what we're feeling, what we've been pushed down, then there's actually just an energetic flow that can move
Mm-hmm.
through us, and there's just more looseness, and immediately there's going to be other options that we might see that we can't see when we're stuck. We can't see that the mind, when the heart is shut down, the mind is limited, and once we see those options or opportunities, we can start taking steps in that direction. And the other thing I would just say is, it we tend to come up with, well, I'm going to be out with my first book in a year and done, and often we punish ourselves with these standards that we hold ourselves to. And I just say take small steps,
Mm-hmm.
consistent steps. So it might be that you listening out there, you uh, spend some time with that part that's inside you, that's really longing to be heard. Maybe you sit down and you write from that place for a while, and we do the inner work, and then we take an action, right? So you give that some space, and then maybe you send an email to someone who's a blogger. So it's a combination of both of those, the kind of the doing the inner work, the holding, the opening to what's there,
Mm-hmm.
and taking a small step, and gradually those small steps add up.
Right, right. And beautifully said. Thank you so much, Marisa. And yeah, so can you tell us about, I know you also do like coaching.
Hmm.
Yeah, one-on-one coaching. Can you tell us exactly what you do, or who you actually serve in terms
Yeah,
of your coaching?
yeah, gladly. So I work both as a personal transformation coach and
Mm-hmm.
then also as a writing coach. And the personal transformation coaching is really about helping my clients find more freedom and joy and depth of connection with oneself and others in life. And invariably, that actually also leads to more creative expression, just more expression. Uh, and the writing coaching is often has a craft element where I'm working with a client on maybe a piece of work or a body of work, a book, and that is bringing in it brings in the personal transformation coaching as well, because often we're stuck, or where we're stuck in our creative work, we're often stuck in our lives. So bringing in some of that work around building a writing process that feels happy and sustainable and productive, and then also working to teach craft as we go. So um, not only is that person producing more, but the quality of their work is improving as they go. Um, I tend in both areas to draw kind of spiritual creatives, people um, who feel like they're on some kind of a path, some kind of a deep uh, path of growth, and feel they have a lot to give to the
Mm-hmm.
world, and are very interested in their own in exploring deeper their own creativity and capacity. So yeah, but the writing coaching can be everything from getting, like I have a client who is now a regular contributor to the New York Times, and multiple clients whose books have come out. And so it can range depending on the person. And the personal transformation coaching, um, the testimonials I tend to get are around feeling like their lives have changed, and they're much more in yeah, operating from their own truth and beauty. Yeah.
I like that. Thank you so much for the work you are doing. Thank you for putting light, for bringing your light into the world and actually making the light of other people actually shine, like helping them identify that light in them and also bringing it out in their personal life. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
it's my pleasure. It really,
yeah.
I love this work. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. So, do you have anything else you would love to share with us? Because, but at the end of this, or in the description box of this episode, I'm gonna have your information, your website, and everything on there. So, if anybody want to reach to you, they can get to you directly, or they want to visit your website and see your work and see more about the things that you do, or ask you any questions, they can actually get to you. So, anything else you would love to share with the audience today to, you know, brighten the day? I know
Yeah.
you've already shared a lot, but maybe the last one,
Um,
last word or something.
I like to talk. I could go on and on. The one thing that occurs to me is so I haven't taught outside. I work one-on-one privately as a coach, but in terms of my teaching, I hadn't taught outside an institution for I think about close to 8 years, just
Hmm.
teaching through both academic and then also sort of spiritual, spirit rock or CIS. And these are intense times, and I just started an offering that is designed to be super accessible. It's on a sliding scale of 10 to 50, and it's Tuesday evenings, writing and meditation class, and it's been just a delight so far. So you're cordially invited to come join us. It's over Zoom, and there are details on my website. It's 6:30 PST, and we spend some time. I do some guided meditation, and then I have prompts to do some creative writing, and we do some small group sharing, and it's meant to be deeply inspiring and generative, which I think we could all use right now. So yeah.
Definitely. And I am one of those who will be there today. I'm going to experience,
Yay!
yeah, I'm going to be there and just experience,
Woo.
all that together. So I'll be there today. So you guys just heard about what Marisa does. And so don't hesitate to reach out or to attend one of these and be present so you can have that experience and be inspired and become even more creative. By being in an environment of like-minded people, that is the best place to be, where you can tap, more into your inner being and you have that support. You have people who are looking towards the same direction and they are there to help you. So don't hesitate to reach out to Marisa for any questions or for any thing that you're not clear about, or to attend one of our sessions. Why not? We never know until we're there. Go ahead and try that out, and that might be, that point where you'll be like, oh my goodness, that is my turning point. So let's get it going, take action, and keep being creative. And Marisa, that's her specialty. She will help you to become even more creative in the things that matter to you. So it's been really an honor and a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for sharing from your heart and for pouring it out here for us and letting us know that we have what it takes to move forward in our life and to let our light really shine, and just really going into talking about yourself and the decisions that you made shows and gives us even more clarity and empowers us, inspires us to be able to make those decisions for ourselves. And looking at you as, okay, Marissa, she was able to do this. And what excuse do I have not taking, these tiny actions? It's not about just, going full in, but what simple step we can take, to move forward in that direction, but being in um, in connection with that inner power, with our, you know, that power that breathes each and every one of us. So it's been a great time. And we've come to the end of this episode. So stay tuned and keep being creative and take actions, and move forward. Blessings and love. Bye for now. Namaste.